Okay, so we're here at the Eternity Genesis Week, and I'm joined by two members of the team. Guys, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Emil, you start.
Hey, I'm Emil, and I'm leading the Äpps team at Eternity. So we're also a distributed team. We have a hub in Berlin, but we have also teams in Vladivostok, and then other cities around Ukraine, some people in London, UK. Yeah.
Pretty big.
Yeah, it's actually pretty big. My name is Emin, so it's pretty close to this guy next to me. And we are a software company, so a technology software company. So obviously most of the people are technical people, around, let's say 70% or so. And I'm with Eternity since the early start and helped to set up the team which is here today. And I'm still looking over it, that everything goes smooth there on that side.
Cool. So I just want to start by asking you guys for just a simple explanation of what Eternity is and what makes it different to other blockchains that are already out there.
I mean, I can continue.
Yeah,
Okay,
please
cool.
do.
So Eternity is a new blockchain, first of all. So that means there are other blockchains out there. We are a new one. It is a smart contract platform, so you can have code that runs on the blockchain and executes things, does stuff. And what makes Eternity very different from other projects is that we really re-engineered with knowledge from we could say the past 10 years, because blockchain technology is 10 years old now, and did cherry picking in areas that we believe are important for public adoption. This includes nice developer experience that is safer and to produce high quality code, but that also includes very simple features that we think are important, like having a name instead of a crazy hash when you want to contact someone or send someone a token.
So is usability a really big part of...
Is that how you could summarize it? So this is on different fields. So what prevents blockchain technology right now from adoption? And of course you have scalability issues if you want to. So there are a couple of technologies in Eternity that address that one. First of all, state channels here to do off-chain transactions. And then, but there are also a couple of other technologies that more improve the UX if you want to build an application on top of Eternity, like technologies like Bitcoin NG, where you have way better interactive performance. I mean, now when we build an e-commerce app right now on traditional technologies, and we're fighting for hundreds of milliseconds to get a response, and if you use blockchain, you have at least almost minutes.
Yeah.
until you get a response, and we implement technology that gives you almost instant feedbacks, and we're talking about seconds here. And that also empowers developers to build way more user-friendly applications.
Maybe even applications where people in the near future will not even recognize that blockchain is powering them. And and this of course gives us a lot of UX challenges. Like, I think the example with e-commerce is very nice. So when we now think about whenever you press a button in an app, you in the traditional world you would, obviously some information has to travel and has to be stored somewhere, or something has to happen. And in a decentralized system, this traveling of information just takes a little longer, obviously. So we also have UX challenges where how do we teach people when it's not only the technology underneath, but like the interfacing layer that you look at when you press a button and it takes 3 seconds. How do you explain this without making the user think he's back in 1998 and just has a slow machine or a crappy phone? So there are many challenges. They are not only on code level, but actually really from when a user has this application in its hand and starts using it.
So I want to ask how, and if I can ask for a bit of a simple explanation, don't have to dive too deep, but how does Eternity scale, and how is its scaling solution different to some other solutions that people might already be familiar with?
So there, for the scaling part, there are two different technologies. One is like on-chain, that is Bitcoin and G that I just mentioned, where instead of like, if you look like it's a traditional blockchain where you have like someone solves a puzzle and then collects the transactions from the past 10 minutes or whatever the block time is and builds a new block and publishes it to the chain. When someone solves a puzzle, he becomes the elected leader, and from that point on, he is signing off transactions. He's collecting them in micro blocks, and then signs transactions, signs these blocks that that come. But instead of doing it from the past, you start then when you're electing leader to sign what comes in the future from that point until someone else. And
so I just want to check that my understanding of it is correct. It's that you have a key block, which is that large block, that person that you're talking about. And then in the time between the next key block being created, that same validator creates a series of micro blocks.
Exactly.
Great.
So the key block itself doesn't contain any transaction. The transactions are in the micro blocks.
And what's the time between micro blocks?
So I think we have around 3 seconds right now.
Okay, cool.
But there's also, I mean, this is still open for discussion on improvement and optimization, but I think this is a very nice, smart way of doing it. And as I said in the beginning, this is not even our idea, but we adapted it. We looked at research, we looked at, there was an academic research from a university that previously did that and kind of invented that. And for us, it was very important that we are not, saying we are like the crazy scientists coming up with the smart-ass idea that is better than any other blockchain out there, but we actually try to look what is there already, what have people proven and discussed over years now. So Bitcoin NG was originally introduced 4 years ago, but was never implemented in a proof-of-work system. So this is things we did. And also, we are realistic. There is just no way that we will have billions of transactions with today's blockchain technology on-chain. There are like some ideas, there are some very centralized services, what we really didn't want to do. So because we thought we'd just lose the whole spirit and idea of blockchain when we do this and have some master nodes or whatever thing. And so we said, okay, what can we do? And when you look at the legal system, for example, let's say you and me making a contract, what we would do is we would say, we sit down here at this table, make the contract, you get a copy, I get a copy, we go home. If there is a problem, we will go in front of Kurt and get this resolved there. And so you could see state channels as exact the same thing. So people can do transactions and can use blockchain technology, make contracts, work with each other in an unlimited scalable speed because it's just two people somewhere outside. And if they have a problem and if they want to get it resolved, then they go back and basically submit their copy of the contract they had. And then it gets resolved on chain and then tokens get redistributed. And on the technical side, we believe that that there will be a lot of use cases where two or multiple parties just say, okay, let us deposit a certain amount here, like a security deposit on chain, then let us go off the chain, work there, do transactions, millions, billions of transactions, as many as you need, play a ego shooter game. Every time I hit you, you give me a token. Every time you hit me, I give you a token. Every time this happens, it's a off-chain transaction, signing a contract. And by the day we decide to stop our business or fun game relationship, we go back, submit our contracts, and it gets resolved. And this is the way we think we can scale Eternity into.
So I want to ask that with the side channel thing, is there a bit of security that gets lost there? Is there a bit of decentralization?
Maybe use case also. Let's imagine there's a decentralized service for electric car rentals. So and then with this state channel, I deposit some amount in a channel, and someone has a car, and now he knows, okay, I apparently have enough funds to rent it. And once then I use the car, I can just be charged by the minute or by the miles I'm driving. And I can do a transaction every second, basically. And once we return it, we close the channel, all fine.
And there's no security, this is exact same security like you have on-chain. So the cryptographic like proofs and all the things how we can enforce that some latest state. So when we talk about state, we always actually say you and me agreed on something and put their signature on it. And if we have the same thing, and if we go and submit it to the blockchain, back to the blockchain, then this will be obvious. And maybe the other one has time to say, hey, look, this guy submitted something which is like 10 days old. Mm-hmm. I have something which is actually from today. Mm-hmm. So there is like something wrong going on. And then this can be resolved again without a middleman. So it's just cryptography, signing stuff, and getting it resolved by magic math. And this is the same thing that is still happening.
Cool. I really want to dive into something there. You talked about looking at other solutions, and you were like, they don't honor the idea of what blockchain is and that it's decentralized. Why is decentralization so important?
So we want to create, with blockchain technology, something like a public good. So that everybody can use, that everybody has access to, where everybody has the same opportunities to build on top of it and develop their idea of a service for, again, users that are interacting with it. And in order to achieve this and make this something for everyone, it cannot be owned by someone and it cannot be controlled by someone, because it will just take away, you will always run into this moment also as an entrepreneur where you might think, okay, so there is someone who might not like what I am trying to do or what I am trying to solve, and for the future development also in the next couple of years or decades, one power of blockchain, and we see this a lot, is that I could now disagree with my whole team and decide to like fork away the project and make a completely new blockchain, and this is also a kind of governance and power that where you can have like in-depth debates about like things you disagree with, and have like and this gives every single person who is in this community some kind of power. This is why it's important to be decentralized, because this is also a redistribution of power to everyone who is participating in such a network.
Nice. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think it's a very pretty fair.
I think that was
share these values of decentralization and this idea behind this. I think also if you want to build a system where everyone has like equal access to, there's, I don't know, the past showed us that we were not able to build this in a centralized way. So that is. So let's try it with that, and so far it looks very promising.
Cool. So the next thing that I want to ask you about is the actual apps being built on top of Aeternity, because obviously that's what it's for. So can you tell us a little bit about what's currently being built on it?
So I mean, we just launched our chain, so we have like start with the very basic building blocks now.
Actually, for context, do you want to tell people how old the chain is right now?
Wait, let me
check how many blocks we have.
1 hour, 13 hours and 21 minutes.
There you go. So it's very early stages.
Yes, so of course we start with the fundamentals, and for us in the Äpps team, it is right now also one of the first things to do is to provide the tools people need to develop apps on one hand, and for the for users, a nice way to interact with the chain and decentralized apps. So that means we start with a wallet. We spend in the last month a lot of time to figure out a system how the wallet and an app can communicate with each other. When you develop decentralized apps, for example, you always have the problem, where do I store the data? So on chain, you don't want to store sensitive information there, even if it's encrypted. It's also expensive. So then what do you do? Okay, you use another decentralized service, maybe IPFS, and but also there you have a couple of issues, and so we also thought about it. When we now create a new way how apps and wallets can interact, we should also think about things like a permission model and things like that. Apps can also ask the users for permission to store their data in their wallets and not see them just as not just a setup to do transactions, but also to do some more. And so this is the infrastructure level.
So you're talking like sort of a digital identity then, or?
Yeah, let's say in the future probably people will use this to create something like digital identities.
So it's a way of storing your own personal data as well as your finances.
Yes, just that this data never leaves your device.
Yeah.
So it is, so that is very important. At least if the user doesn't want it. If I want to back it up somewhere, yes, I can do that. But if you don't want it, per default, the apps can store also their sensitive information in the future in the wallet. Right now we're on the very basics. You can ask, for example, an app can ask the wallet for, hey, I want to read your address. Can I do that? And users can actively allow that instead of just broadcasting it. So what we start with is, of course, a basic, like for users, Blockchain Explorer, of course, a nice wallet. And from that on, we build on top of that and plan to do some stuff that also have kind of push the adoption a little bit.
So that's where I really want to go into, is that building on top of it. I know that you've got an incubator. I know that you've, around the world you've got different hubs. What are some of the apps that those hubs, incubators, startup teams have actually produced?
So we have, I'm talking about it, maybe I take an example which has not been built yet, but and actually also where they still struggle, but we have at least 15, 16 different nice projects now.
And can you say what those are?
Yes, of course. I mean, so we have one guy who started very simple. He said he wants to, for example, tip farmers which are producing coffee or other goods we buy, and when you go on an online shop and you buy a good, and that you can actually send a little microtransaction or a little tip directly to the person who is...
That's actually very interesting. In Australia, we have a big initiative right now to support the farmers because drought has hit them really hard. So that's really, really interesting. So
because and it makes would make a huge difference to them, because when you buy a coffee for $5 and you just tip like for a little big thing, and it like actually directly receives the person who's maybe working on the field or something like that. This was like, so we have a lot of those things which, there is not a business model behind it or so, but it shows a good example what you can do and how you can do it. And I think there will be many people who would be happy to try it out. And when they do, they will also need to understand and experience blockchain and blockchain applications and private and public keys and like all that kind of things. And this is we have like this double thing, also a missionary thing for people to understand what this enables them to do in the future. But we also have a cooperative for electricity sharing in Serbia, something like this. So there are already models where people govern themselves in some kind of community, which, for example, is such a cooperative where you have electricity producers, they want to have a free market and share this and things like that. And of course, everything where you connect people that share stuff and exchange things, then blockchain technology is the right thing to do. So is this
perhaps, I have solar panels on my roof and I want to sell it to my neighbor because I'm away for a week or something?
Yeah, for example,
Yeah. Great, so we've got...
And in cooperative, just to make that, cooperatives are, for example, already closed communities. So this is already like, I am part in a cooperative, there are 20,000 people, they already do all kind of exchange and business with each other, or governance where they decide about the future investments of that cooperative and things like that. And in order to make this more effective, more trusted, you can perfectly use blockchain to communicate in between all those members and also exchange value.
So we've got a payments app, essentially, the tipping app, an electricity marketplace. Could you perhaps say two more projects that really excite you?
One is, for example, small like health insurance for motorcyclists in Kenya. So where there's also like a real problem over there and where blockchain technology can help with solving this, and with micropayments and small payments, and without having large transactions.
And was that started through one of your incubators?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, most of them are
Right,
so
safe.
yeah.
And so how did that come about? Did you go to Africa?
No, we did some workshops with the teams. Some teams joined on site, I think it was in Bulgaria, and some teams connected remotely. So and we tried to deliver the same experience for everyone.
Great.
And so also the Äpps team itself is not in one place, so we're quite used to hanging out
decentralized,
hanging out in video chats and sharing our knowledge, although we are not also working in the same place.
And for us, it's also this incubator is not only for just supporting projects to get on their feet and start their app. It's also for us, of course, to get their feedback. Because we are close to them and they are trying to solve something and build something. And of course, they will come back to us and say, "I tried this and it's not working, or it's too slow. Or I have problems here. Or can you help me with this?" And it's like also will improve. They were kind of contributing in making blockchain technology better, and not only contributing in building applications for users. So that it has this two sides of why also not only we, but actually the whole blockchain community has spent a lot of efforts in education and also early stage investments and all that stuff. And
and I could also mention that people will also use features in a completely different way as we imagine them. For example, the state channels, we imagine them as a solution for scaling, but actually you could also use them to do transactions offline if you don't have electricity and energy at the same time. So as long as both parties sign a transaction, you with a state channel, you can also publish it later, but you're always sure that both sides have the necessary funds for this transaction.
Okay, fascinating. And so I know that you've got an in-house apps team, is that correct? Yeah. And you mentioned before a wallet. What other sorts of projects are you looking at doing in-house down the line?
Yeah, let's say, so for now we start with the blockchain explorer and the wallet and these kind of things. But I think we will always focus a little bit on the fundamentals. So basically what would help everyone in the ecosystem to make their apps better. And so that could also be, now that we'll also release a couple of app examples also for users, or we see maybe we need one app that's more like a lighthouse app that is helping to get more users into the whole ecosystem. So wherever the challenge is, we'll try to deliver something.
Cool. So,
for example, one example could be we want to include people to join the conversation. So we're also planning a governance application where it's more about signaling and discussing, debating, things like that. But the important thing here is that we don't just want this for us and our little community of people, but the whole software we build, if somebody else builds an application where they also need some kind of governance, maybe this cooperative I just talked about, they could use those building blocks and include them in their own application. And this is very important. So when we develop apps in-house, those apps should be like super sexy, ready to take, ready to modify and integrate in your own startup kind of building blocks that we aim for.
And so speaking about community, I know it's still early days, but do you have an active mining community ready to come on board and start supporting the blockchain? What's your kind of community like in that regard?
So I mean, the blockchain space is a mix between like really fascinated technology enthusiasts, traders, miners. It's like a mixed space, but all of them are kind of still early adopters, or many of them. For sure, one of the most professionalized communities is the mining industry, and we have a proper, solid proof of work blockchain. So of course people will get on board there and will look into it, and if they see the future in it, they might even invest and say, I want to support this instead of another product. But Also user acquisition, for example, when you talk about this will also happen a lot through the real life, real use applications that are going to be built on top of Eternity. So they will hopefully, and like us and many others, get new people and introduce new people to blockchain technology and decentralized applications. And we are going out a lot. You know, we're talking to journalists, we're going to conferences. We are organizing meetups regularly, not only in Berlin, but like everywhere in the world, and also motivating other people to do so. And this is a process, and that we're growing the community.
And if people want to join these meetups or they want to participate, where should they go? Is there a particular website, or how can people get involved?
So we have some ambassadors who are organizing these meetups all around the world, and get in touch there with the local communities and spread the word.
Yeah, we have online, we are using the classic channels. I mean, we're using meetup.com, we are using, maybe we change it one day if there's something else gets more popular. We are using Telegram, we're active on Twitter. You will find every person on our website if you want to contact someone directly. We have chat rooms like Rocket Chat. So I mean, this in nowadays, I mean, we are the most public figures. It's like really no hustle to find us and follow us if you want to do so.
Yeah, one thing I want to ask about is staying on mining. I know that you've got a really fascinating approach to staying ASIC resistant, which is, I think, a very big issue at the moment. And I know that maybe not yet, but down the line, even smartphones will be able to mine Eternity. Is that correct?
So I don't think it's correct anymore. It was correct like 2 years ago, but technology is evolving very fast, and we of course go with it. I also don't think anymore that we are ASIC resistant. Maybe there are even ASICs out there already. We don't know. The future will be, let's say you would have an ASIC resistant GPU only mining algorithm. Then you could say, like, this is very centralized because there are literally just 2 companies producing chips for those graphic cards. So, and owning 95% of the market. So what will need to happen really is maybe we will have open source ASICs one day that are super cheap to produce, and we will have 50 companies worldwide that will be able and can produce ASICs.
So saying like the actual hardware.
Yeah, so the actual hardware that secures the network. So we are like still moving in a direction. I mean, for us it is super important, and for many others it is super important to have a extremely decentralized also mining community. But none of us, like in the whole space, is there yet, but many have the same idea, and I think as long as this idea stays top of mind, we will achieve this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in a couple of years. Hardware gets cheaper, algorithms get better, we can hard fork if we want, and if it's really, really getting necessary to do so. And I think we will achieve a decentralized system one day, and as long as we keep this top priority.
So do you still use Cuckoo cycles then? Yes. And so if I understand it correctly, that relies on RAM rather than GPU. So is that how you originally planned to keep it ASIC resistant? And what's changed there?
Also the original plan was of course like to have the difference to mine with low power devices. Is also there's a gap obviously also depending on the computing power, but it is way less than other algorithms and Cuckoo cycle. That is the idea behind that you could also use other devices for mining. So we know now today that there's quite a gap, and also with Cuckoo cycle, and it is more effective still to use GPUs or something like that you might not have in your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Not yet. Give it a few years. Yeah. You just mentioned before about like the community, the blockchain community working together to a common goal of decentralizing mining. Unfortunately, what we see so much at the moment is fierce competition between some blockchains. What do you think of that sort of thing? Do you think it's healthy competition in the space, or do you see this as a sort of negative thing that is creating a hurdle to blockchain adoption?
It is definitely creating a hurdle to blockchain adoption, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I also think, and so far there's still, most of the projects are also like working, sharing their code, like they have open source repositories, and with a lot of projects we want to achieve the same things, we have different approaches, and I think this is very good, and because in the end, we can all learn from each other. We develop everything in public, and that is like, I think it's a very good competition if it goes on that level. Yeah, and as long as we stay with the spirit, I think it is also good to have a lot of projects around that are trying different things and can learn from each other what works, what doesn't, and also adapt us.
Do you personally work with any other people from other blockchains, or is there open communication there?
Yeah, I'm personally in contact with a couple of other projects, and we exchange ideas also how could we make blockchain technology in general more user-friendly, because we all profit from that, and there are a lot of challenges we have to solve, and often to improve the user experience and for some challenges we can develop technical solutions. For us it is more a way how can we communicate something that makes it more easy to understand, and yes.
And there are companies that, I mean, this year, last year, many companies popped up that are also explicitly working on interoperability of protocols, and we have some seriously good projects approaching that have super nice ideas how we can actually talk with each other and connect to each other. So this is a chance. Maybe we will see in the near future that two projects merge. I mean, we have talked a lot about splits and people disagreeing, but I imagine that we could come to a point where this goes into the other direction, where people say, hey, your product is great, our product is great, let's just throw it together. And I wonder why this doesn't happen yet, but I'm pretty sure it will happen in the future.
Which two blockchains would you merge if you could just pick two out right now?
This is cool.
Which would you merge?
So, for example, maybe Stellar and NEM. I could imagine they are like two interesting projects, and NEM has an interesting governance and an interesting community, and Stellar was a split from Ripple, you could say, and has many people love their documentation and what they do, but they both have features, they both have a big community. If something like this will happen, could be an interesting project.
And yourself?
I don't comment on that. But I think so too, would be interesting.
Yeah, look, I got a fan.
Great.
Hi Stella, hi Nem.
So yeah, speaking of other blockchains, like a lot of people obviously that have joined the market in the past year or two are always looking at prices and judging projects by this, but obviously that's no way to measure a project that's based on technicals and fundamentals. What do you look at to assess a project and say that's a really great blockchain?
I would say if people are able to build applications on top of it that also really get some adoption, and not just, and at some point also not just early adopters, people who know already about blockchain, but really, if my mother is starting to use these apps, that would be a success.
Fantastic. I used the example of my mother using blockchain before and saying that's the point we need to get to. So, yeah, great. And one last question just before we wrap up. We asked this to everyone, so, just keep that in mind. What will the price of Bitcoin be on New Year's Eve at midnight when the clock strikes 12 and the champagne pops? What's the price of Bitcoin going to be?
Which year?
This year.
The same as it is today.
The same as it is today. Do we know what that is?
No. Something, I don't know. I don't know. What is it today?
Hold on, we'll get an answer.
4041.
4041.
Okay.
That's my answer.
There we go.
US dollars.
I would go for 4040.
Okay, let's do the bet.
Fantastic. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. It was a good interview.